Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sales Planning for COVID-19 Recovery. My name is Nick Fry. I am the Manager of Business Development with Tourism Nova Scotia, and really happy that you could join us today. So we are just letting everyone join the webinar. Sometimes it takes a few minutes. So just wanted to, again, thank you for being here today and welcoming us on our 6th webinar for Tourism Nova Scotia's new webinar series. We know travel restrictions have had significant impacts on travel and businesses, so we wanted to provide some resources and tools to help move your business through the pandemic and also to be ready when the time is right to welcome visitors again. Now, we have scheduled about an hour today, but we're most likely going to go over that hour. So you can feel confident knowing that we will send out a video of the recording. So if you need to sign off at 11, that's okay. And we'll make sure you get a copy of everything. And if you can stay on the whole time, that's great. We just feel it's really effective to answer all the Q&A and just make sure we finish the presentation rather than speed through in the hour. Now, if you have any questions, just put it at the bottom of the Q&A. We will answer them throughout the webinar. If you have any questions that are outside of the scope of what we're talking about today, that's great. Just send us an email or a private message and we'll make sure you get the answer. We've had a lot of people with some great questions around COVID-19, and we have a terrific resource on our website that can help out with that. And we'll share the link afterwards for that as well. So don't be nervous about that. Any questions, we'll answer them for sure. We encourage questions, actually. It makes sure there could be people in the audience that have the same questions. So it's great. So just anytime that you have a question, send it our way in the Q&A at the bottom. Throughout the webinar, we might mention a few links or different websites, and we'll make sure we share that information at the end as well. We want to make sure that everyone has all the information they need. And you'll also receive, I already probably mentioned this, but a webinar recording within 24 hours. We're also going to send a SurveyMonkey, just a quick questionnaire, so you can let us know what you thought. We obviously want to be as effective as we can. We want to make sure we're delivering great webinars, so just give us some feedback where we welcome it. And wanted to let you know that we have a great presenter today, Eva Gutsche from STEM Consulting. We also have some other guests joining us later. Eva, you may recognize her from an earlier webinar a few weeks back. She also worked with the Atlantic Travel Trade Workshop over the last couple of years. Eva's got 18 years of facilitation experience working with Canadian tourism operators, destination and provincial marketing organizations. She's been giving COVID-19 presentations and webinars in different provinces. She's got hands-on experience as a tourism supplier, working in the domestic and overseas markets. And she helps tourism operators adjust to changing situations. She worked when SARS happened, global travel safety concerns, economic downturns, and overall shifts in consumer demand. So today, Eva's going to cover short-term focus, understanding what demand may be like after the pandemic, creating a short-term consumer marketing strategy for the recovery phase, and planning for 2021 and beyond to attract local, regional, and international visitors. So I'm extremely happy to have Eva here today. Her presentation webinar a few weeks back was awesome, very well attended, lots of great questions. So Eva, if you just want to unmute yourself and take over the screen, we'd love to have your insights today.
Oh, here we go. I
there you
thought I
go.
was running into a little bit of a technical challenge, but I think we've got that covered.
We took care of it for you.
Okay.
Oh.
So I'm having a little challenge sharing my screen.
Okay, that's okay. This is not a perfect process, so we will just, if you, maybe Jennifer in the background might need to give you some extra powers as a panelist to be able to do that.
There we go. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, good morning, everyone. So great to be back with you. I know a few of you I've had a chance to meet in the past, and I recognize a couple from the previous webinar. So welcome. Interesting topic this morning as we start looking at, how do we plan with all these unknowns, and that's so we're going to look at that today. So even though you may be waiting for critical information for your business, which impacts your business directly, there's still lots we can do as we lead up and get that information or some new information that shifts everything for us. So in here, what we're going to cover today is really defining a strategy and tactics with so many unknowns. And so if I've got a number of plans based on this scenario, I'm ready to go as soon as I have that trigger point, which we'll talk about those trigger points, and really looking at those key elements of flexibility and agility. They've always been important in running a successful business, but they've really been put to the test through the entire COVID-19 situation that we've been living through. So kind of looking at really breaking down the information. What do I know? What do I think is going to happen based on what I know? And what is completely unknown to me at this point that has a direct impact on me? So when we're looking at the strategy and the planning, the short-term focus is of course critical. Want to salvage what we may have lost already in 2020 and see what we can do for summer 2020, but we don't want to lose sight of the longer term or the bigger picture. So as we're in reaction mode, trying to work with the short term, what are we doing in order to ensure success in 2021 and beyond? And as Nick mentioned, we have some guests that are going to help us with that as we start looking beyond the local and regional market. And then really it's about putting these steps into action. So as Nick mentioned, the deck will be available after the workshop, and any questions you have, if there's some topics that come up that we can provide resources for, the team at Tourism Nova Scotia will do that. And so as you've invested an hour with me, so thank you so much for that. You haven't invested it yet, but you're planning on it, so that's great. And I want to make sure that that hour you're investing works for you. So as we're going through, I challenge you and encourage you to think of one immediate thing that you will put in place after the webinar. So something you can do right away, something that you may trigger something going, yeah, I hadn't thought of that. I have these other things in place. And then one longer term initiative. So what will you do to ensure success, as the world comes back, may not come back to completely the way we knew it, but it'll come back close. And based on that, what is one longer term initiative you want to put into place? And so as we're looking at this entire situation that we faced, it started early in the year as we started learning about the virus overseas, internationally, and then it was coming closer. And then of course in the middle of March, our world's changed drastically. And so as you are, working in the business, a team member, an owner, regardless of your role, you're taking on a leadership role in many ways as we're working through this. So I want to take a look at skills and attributes really of leading through crisis. And so I encourage your input. So my question out to you, and this is for the Q&A, and I'll have the Tourism Nova Scotia team pull the answers and we'll get some feedback. So what skills and attributes you will need as you plan for and manage your business through reopening and operating during this current time frame? So we're, slowly things are shifting, and now we have to start really planning on how we're going to run our business. So what skills and attributes are required? So if you can just pop that in the Q&A, that'd be great.
We have adaptability.
Okay.
So anybody else, you can put it in the chat or the Q&A just to follow up on Eva's question.
Okay.
Quick decision making.
Nice. Oh, and I see one here from Natalie. Stay calm. Stay calm. Absolutely. Sometimes that's really tough to do.
So cash flow management, nimble, creativity. Be a strong leader, reassurance skills, creativity.
Fantastic.
Flexibility, creativity. Yep.
Okay, that's
Some
great.
themes.
Thank you so much. Some of these I had, and there's always some other great ones that pop up. So let's take a look at, from my research, some of the key attributes and skills needed right now. And so flexibility came up. Probably the key, a really key one here, covers so many in here, is strong, effective communication skills. The creativity was mentioned, and really a big picture thinker. It's so easy right now to get caught in the weeds, so to say, of putting out little fires or worrying about product and getting into that place, and that's all required, absolutely. But maintaining that big picture focus, collaboration's key. I think, as an industry in Nova Scotia, there's lots of collaboration already. I think that need to work together and share information has just ramped up a notch. Cash flow was mentioned, and I put that in here kind of to structure and policy and processes and, and managing that aspect of the business. One that came up from another workshop, which I added in, was positive attitude. It's so easy right now to worry and be concerned with all this information coming at us in the situation. So maintaining positive. Knowledge is key. And put in here trainer, teacher, mentor, guide. So in here, this role, it's going to be multifaceted. You've always had that role in your business, but now you're guiding the guests in a different way. You're working with your team members in a different way. Their role has changed or will change if they're not back in the workplace yet. So the extra things that they're going to need from you and need to learn, and how do you handle situations, guest situations that haven't arisen in the past based on legislated guidelines. So lots of you need to ramp up, the fantastic leader you already are, really tapping into some of the aspects of your day-to-day leading and managing that you may not necessarily have tapped in as frequently, but these are all now in front of you. So we need a superhero here in our businesses. So came across a quote as we're looking at leadership skills and attributes, and the best leaders don't know just one style of leadership. They're skilled at several and have the flexibility to switch between styles as the circumstance dictates. So I thought that summed up this so well. And so you're going to go into from the cash flow management into the creativity piece and do it very nimbly and quickly. So you're going to tap into all these. And so there's two that I'm really feel are critical as we're looking at the sales planning process. And one is flexibility, and which came up already from you and from the research. And it's really the ability you're able to change. The ability to change or be changed easily according to the situation. So that's the flexibility piece, and tied into that so closely is the agility piece. The power to move quickly and easily, nimbleness, the ability to think and draw conclusions quickly, intellectual acuity. So being flexible and adaptable and being able to do that very, very quickly and move as everything around us is changing and moving. And so this quote here from Linda Holbeck is, "A flexible business is able to make changes within the current organizational system when a predicted event occurs. And the agile business are able to change the overall system completely in response to an unpredictable external force." And certainly COVID-19 has been a very, was an unpredictable external force. As things are changing, we had a sense it was coming, but it still came very quickly. And so we're looking at flexing and adapting, and it's really looking at our options, and from the options making making decisions and planning around that. And then as the situation changes, being able to quickly adapt and move into plan B. And so the planning piece, there's always ambiguity when we're planning. We have all our data, we have our goals, we start looking at how we're going to reach those goals. We rely on historical data, we rely on information as far as the environment and the economy. And then, things happen, as has happened in the past. But I think the ambiguity that we're facing right now is really unprecedented. And so when we start looking at the first aspect of planning is what do you know? What are the current facts? And so some of this is, we have facts and information in relation to self-isolation for travelers. We have facts and information in regards to airlines, who's traveling, you know, which routes have been delayed or canceled temporarily. We have information in regards to borders. So that's what we know. There's unknown around it as well. We don't know when it's going to change, but we know what it is right now in this moment. And then what's most likely to happen. So we have lots of resources available to us. We start looking at, you know, predicting future revenues, predicting future travel trends. We have some past information from other crises, probably not to the extent that we're facing now, but we can draw on some of that. And based on consumer, human, or traveler behavior at that time, what happened and how does that impact our situation today? So some most likely to happen, some assumptions, and then we have what is definitely uncertain. So situations and dates, timeframes, months, still unknown, you know, and how and what that will look like. So if we start kind of working with this, it will help guide us as we start looking at various options. And so we look at A, what do you know? What are the current facts? And so what we do know is that the world is reopening globally. And we start looking at, you know, it's interesting, different countries. We look at Europe, you know, each country is in a different place as far as the reopening within that country. You've got states and provinces that are operating differently. You've got some countries like Spain and Italy saying we're ready to welcome tourists by June and marketing accordingly. We've got, you know, we've got businesses and churches and restaurants in some places opening, and now it's starting. We're watching as they're shifting some of the guidelines, some of the things that have happened, the max capacities, and so we can learn a little bit from that. And we know that different parts of the country here in Canada, you know, they're in different phases, and we're very much in different phases here in Canada. And so what do we know? We know, and this, you know, it's interesting, even developing the webinars and working with the team at Tourism Nova Scotia, would have the data together, would have the deck together, and then all of a sudden new news. And the new news that needed to be added was the extension of how long the US-Canada border. So now it's at least until June 21st. So that immediately is, as a piece of information like that comes into our reality. So now it's moved into perhaps an assumption or an unknown, and now it's a known. Now we can act, and hopefully, you know, as we have to move quickly. Hopefully, what you need to act upon, you've already got that in place somewhat. And I'll give you some examples here. We know the group size restrictions are still in place. Inbound flights are certainly not what it had been in the past. It doesn't mean it won't go there, but we don't know when that will happen. You know, the opening dates for local businesses, the self-isolation, and the distancing. And so some of these, as we're starting to look at, you know, is it an unknown, or can I make an assumption that this will be around at least for several months, or perhaps I'm, you know, based on what I've learned, it's going to be around to the end of the year. Now that impacts your operational planning for sure, but also the sales planning. So if I'm used to hosting small groups in my business, and I'm looking at the situation now going, okay, you know, if I'm used to hosting groups of 25 to 50 people, I probably need to figure out plan B, certainly for the short term. And we definitely know there's a real enhanced focus on health, hygiene, and cleaning. And so when we start looking at what you know about your travelers from this, what you've got on the book, so be it that you're a kayak operator, you're an outdoor adventure guide, and you know, you're taking small groups into exploring Nova Scotia, you're an accommodation provider, you're a restaurant, and you know, cater to tourists, locals, and you work the local wedding market. So kind of taking a look at who are your customers for summer 2020, And now I want to also be very clear on their place of origin. And so if I haven't already addressed this part of it of my sales planning, I want to get a real handle on, what do I have available to sell? So what do I really believe is, there's no reason it shouldn't come. It's deposited. It's reconfirmed. We spoke recently. So I've got, X% on the books that I know I can count on, as much as we can count on anything right now, but it's a pretty safe calculation. And then now I've got a gap compared to my previous years, but without really understanding what my gap is, it's very difficult to make some plans. So we want to take a look at that. And then back to, as I mentioned, if I've anything with a group size, so it could be a small tour group or a larger tour group I've still got on the books, taking a look at that. Could be a family reunion or small retreats. So how is, based on what I know today, what is the likelihood of that materializing? So if it's coming in November, I might feel quite different about it than if it's coming in the middle of June. And it's, really looking at all the facts and reality and asking myself, if the situation were to stay status quo, what would that mean for my business? So if the rules that are in place today of everything I know, if that stayed for the next 2 or 3 months, how would that impact my business? And what can I do, tapping into that leadership skill of creativity and innovation, in order to influence some revenue and business? And so coming down to what solutions and ideas I could come up with, and then what are the anticipated timelines? So even though we don't have defined timelines, I need to, in my mind, put some kind of trigger dates in place. So if X hasn't happened by the end of June, then I need to shift, because now I've got July and August. I'd still like to do as much as I possibly can to generate revenue and work with my existing customer base during those months. And so now I'm going, making a decision. If I don't have an answer by then, I'm going to move into plan B. It's a tough one. And at some point you've moved into plan B, you may need to shift it. But if we're waiting for triggers and then moving into action, we've lost too much time, and our chance of recovery it's really dropped. So we want to make sure we're really planning versus waiting, even though we do have to wait. I'm not discrediting that piece of it. And then we start looking at, I mentioned trends from past crisis, and we look at two that certainly, in the last 20 years that we faced was SARS. Certainly didn't have the impact of COVID-19, but it did have a significant impact on tourism, and post 9/11. And the research tells us from those two incidents, travel was fear-based in both different fear for different reasons, but there was definitely a fear impact. And what resulted into that is people were willing to travel by car much further distances than they were willing to travel prior to that. We also saw that after September 11th, it was the makeup of the travelers, or who was traveling, a much bigger focus on family. So if we're looking at that, if I know that from the past, what is the likelihood? So I'm into, my assumptions. So definitely drawing on some of that information. And so, what's most likely to happen? And so we start looking at date estimates. We start looking at situational situations. We start looking at things that we know are happening right now that are going to probably shift. And so, when we're looking at the international market, and I'm going to get some help from my friends here at Tourism Nova Scotia, which markets and customers could be restricted from coming to your place of business. So certainly if you have bookings from the US in early June, there's a problem. So how is that going to work out? And if the rules don't change, then we can assume some cancellations. And how do I want to work with that? And so, if they're not going to materialize, consider options and reaching out now. So partnering with your clients, saying, okay, this is the situation as of today. Based on that, you will not be able to arrive here on June 10th. What can we do about that? And consider your consumer direct channel. So we focus a lot on the short-term conversation is very much locals first. So focusing on that local Nova Scotia market. But beyond that, we are dependent on the international market. And how is that going to work out? Okay, and I'm going to pass it now to Emma. So Emma and Peter. So Peter, I'll start with you.
Great, thank you, Eva, and good morning, everyone. Just to add to your point there a little bit, Eva, I guess I just wanted to point out that we have, we're in touch with a lot of Nova Scotia operators, as well as our receptive tour operators and our international tour operators. And it's difficult navigating through this situation, and you talked a lot about timing and beginning to understand when we'll see that international travel recover. We know local travel will recover first. So I know people have a lot of questions about bookings they may have on the books for 2020, maybe in late summer into the fall. And I think we do need to be patient a little bit longer. I think we've seen some of those bookings either get canceled or trips from our international travelers get postponed later into 2020 or possibly into 2021. And I know a lot of our international tour operators are navigating through that. As we get closer to June, I think again we'll see, as things start to progress and different markets begin to understand when that international travel can begin again, we'll begin to see more of that. So I guess for those operators who have questions about those bookings that are currently on their books for 2020, I would just ask you to be patient a little bit longer. But as Eva said, of course, reach out to your partners, reach out to your receptive tour operators if you have questions about those bookings. Reach out to your international partners if you have questions. And but otherwise, I would just encourage you to be a little patient. I think we'll see things happen over the coming weeks as we get closer and into June. And hopefully, the hope for most of our international tour operators is that we can salvage some of that business for 2021. So they're really trying to, rather than cancel the bookings outright, they're really trying to move those bookings into 2021. So we know that international travel will be important in 2021 and beyond. So what we can recover is really important. With that said, we'll segue into Emma Cashmore, who's our account director for Tourism Nova Scotia in the UK. She's based in London. We're really lucky to have her, and so glad she could join us this morning. She's going to give us a few insights, and we thought it would be interesting to give you a few insights to what's happening in different markets around the world. And Emma's going to share some insights from the UK and some different perspectives on what's happening there from a recovery perspective. So Emma, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be able to participate in this webinar. So here, as Peter said, is just a quick update from the UK market. So I'll start just with our COVID-19 lockdown status. Last week, our status was eased ever so slightly with our Prime Minister Boris Johnson allowing those industries that could not work from home to be allowed to return back to work. But social distancing must be kept in place. We're now allowed outside for as long as we like, and we're able to meet with one other person from a different household as long as we remain at the social distance. Our parks and our beaches are now open, and we can frequent these, as well as our sports centres. So the golf courses have opened again, tennis courts, etc. And from the 1st of June, there will be a slow phasing of school openings for certain ages. The Prime Minister has said that the easing of the lockdown will continue over the coming weeks, but will remain at a slow pace to avoid a second wave. Our quarantine measures at the moment, anyone entering the UK must go into quarantine for 14 days and provide an address as to where they will be for that time. So we are slowly starting to come out of the lockdown. In terms of our tourism market insights, we have remained in close contact with our tour operator and travel agent partners. And what we know is that due to the government job retention scheme, many of the companies have reduced their workforce to a skeleton staff, which is really helping prevent tour operators going into liquidation at this time when their revenue streams are at an all-time low. So the government is really supporting the tourism industry. Since mid-March, what our tour operator partners have been doing, they've been working around the clock to help existing customers with holidays booked up to June to postpone to new dates or cancel if they wish. And now from this point moving forward, they're kind of doing this on a week-by-week basis. For Canada, from the tour operators we have spoken to, the good news is, as Peter's just flagged, is that there is a very high percentage of customers rebooking and postponing their holiday as opposed to outright cancelling their trip. So this is encouraging that the desire to visit Canada, Atlantic Canada and Nova Scotia specifically really remains. Tour operators are also now starting to report that they are seeing an increase in traffic and activity on their websites, which alludes to the British consumer. After being stuck at home for so many weeks, they're now starting to look for inspiration again for their holidays and when they can travel. It's also really important to remember that the UK is a really resilient market, and a holiday is an important part of our life. We don't class it as a luxury, we class it as a necessity. And the fact that a trip to Nova Scotia is likely to be at a higher cost, we're already targeting a demographic that has a higher disposable income. It's unlikely that the people who would be travelling to Nova Scotia in normal times, they will still be able to afford it once we're out of this crisis and the economic repercussions that go with it. It's also reported in various surveys that have been conducted is that consumers will put a lot of thought into where they go next, and they will want to book with a tour operator or a travel agent as opposed to planning their trips by themselves on the internet. So this is why it will be crucial to build and retain those relationships with your travel trade partners internationally. There is also a lot of talk that destinations that are deemed as clean and isolated will fare well in the immediate recovery. But actually how we see this is that if you as a tourism provider can clearly show what your plans are to ensure hygiene standards and safety, then you will be winning, as that will be the way to restore consumer confidence. For example, Accor, which has the Fairmont chain in their group, they've launched an all safe program where their hotels have to achieve certain points on a checklist, and they're also looking at going entirely cashless and only card payments will be accepted, and they've implemented various other protocols as well. Despite all the challenges that are ahead of us, the crisis is also offering a big opportunity to the industry. We're able to do a complete reset, everything will restart, customers have to be convinced and won again, and those industry providers that meet their needs best will strengthen their position in the industry considerably. And also fundamental challenges such as how to handle sustainability, which is now becoming a key factor in everybody's day-to-day life, how you can manage sustainability in travel, that will also be something very strong at the restart to bring better business. What we have been focusing on as the in-market representative for Nova Scotia is to use this quiet time to remain connected with the travel trade and to train and educate the sales agents. What we're hearing from these sales agents is that they want to learn about destinations and get up to speed with how to sell so that when they can proactively sell, they are ready. So last week we participated in a webinar with one of our media partners where we conducted 13 Zoom training presentations on Nova Scotia, which were all very well received. And as a follow-up to this, we're reaching out directly to each attendee with further information, itinerary suggestions and sales tips. To complement this and moving forward towards the rest of this year, we are working on an online training programme, which we will proactively promote to grow students and build a loyal following of ambassadors passionate about Nova Scotia who will help us with our sales pipeline and bringing visitors back to the destination. On the media side, we are proactively pitching to all media, travel trade publications, as well as consumer publications, bloggers, digital, every media entity. And what the media are welcoming is what they call evergreen content, which is focusing on nature, history, culture, and anything that gives authenticity to a destination. Escapism news is also in high demand, where we can present stories that inspire their readers and make them want to visit later on when they can. So from all of our research and touch points that we are having, one thing is very clear, and that is that those providers and destinations that retain their voice throughout this crisis will reap the rewards with a quicker rebound. So I've got 5 key takeaways before I sign off to help with your recovery strategy planning. And that is, number 1, to keep the conversations flowing. So whether that's with your receptives on the ground there or your international partners. Prepare, number 2, prepare for a more focused audience segment. They're going to really be wanting that experience when they travel to Nova Scotia. Number 3, health is the new luxury. Number 4, don't press pause, keep beating the drum, keep your foot in the market. And number 5, inspire, support, and be ready. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Emma. That was a great recap of what's happening in market and what the businesses in Nova Scotia that are working with travel trade or want to work with travel trade can expect. So thank you so much for that. Peter, did you want to add anything as we continue on?
No, I think that was great. I would just echo that. I think, it's very similar in our other international markets. So we're seeing, similar trends and things happening out of Germany. Obviously in China, it's a bit of a different story, but in China, recovery is actually, their travel industry is recovering quicker now that they're in a different stage of crisis. But in all markets, we're seeing relatively similar trends as things progress.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you. Oh, sorry, I'm just going to jump in here.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked for Emma to summarize the 5 takeaways again. I think what we'll do is we'll share those in our follow-up email.
Nice. That's great. Super.
Okay.
Thank you. Just as before we continue on, are there any other questions that anyone has from myself or for Emma or Peter? Just pop it into the Q&A and Nick will let us know when that happens, and we'll take a little pause and we'll address those. Okay, and we start looking at what we might anticipate and assume, and this is, close to all our hearts. We want to get out of the house. So the immediate focus when we want to get out of the house is visiting friends and family. And the next one is taking a little break, getting away from your, that environment that you've been in for a couple of months. We know that as the international market, and Emma certainly and Peter alluded to this, it's 2021. Some of it will delay into 2020, hopefully, based on the situation of what's happening. Hopefully some of that for the fall, but we can certainly look at recovery internationally for 2021. The short haul drive markets, Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada, and other parts in Canada will respond quickest. The long haul Canada will take a little longer. And, when we start looking as well, that you've got situations, so you've got that international traveler that had planned to come to Nova Scotia, and now with the pandemic, the plans have shifted. But we also have Nova Scotians that had planned to travel elsewhere, and those plans have shifted as well. And they're still, they had planned a holiday, and so that is still in top of mind. It's just the destination that they had originally chosen is not likely going to be able to take them in some cases. So there is an opportunity there already. So people had this time set aside, had the intention set aside. So how do we tap into that? And and there's really right now we're seeing this desire to support to support local businesses in the community. And we've heard Justin Trudeau say, you know, let's support other Canadians. So there's this, you know, very much we're in it together. How can we support each other? So these are some of the things we can assume and anticipate. And the last one here is this uncertainty. So, you know, now I know what I know. I really have a good handle on what I can anticipate or assume, though that may change. And then these are certain things that, you know, I'm really, you know, until the border opens, my US bookings won't come. That's, you know, and I need to have a date in order to rebook them. So the opening dates for some tourist services and amenities, and what I'm seeing across the country as different provinces are in different stages, even though some businesses have the clear and that they can now open, they're choosing not to. For a number of reasons, they, you know, not anticipating that the demand will support the opening right now, they're waiting. And so this becomes, you know, very critical from a planning, somewhat operational, but sales planning as well. So in here, as I'm looking at my local market, the experiences that I will want to consider putting in the marketplace will need to take into consideration what's happening in my community. So if some of the tourist services are not operational or will not be for a while, how do I fill that gap? So we keep looking at this gap. So I have the gap in revenue that I've forecasted, and now I have a gap in as far as experiences for the visitors that are coming, be they local or regional. So in here, my sales planning from a marketing perspective will be targeting that local market. From an offering perspective, I will have to take a look at the experiences and packages and services that I'm bundling and offering in order to ensure that that experience that visitor is going to have in my community meets expectations. So we've got, you know, you've got an extra layer on here. So what you may assume has always been there for you, for your customers, may not be. And then we've got this whole, you know, uncertainty, and we've heard Emma speak of as well, this fear of the second wave. What happens if the numbers start to rise? You know, what will impact? So we don't know. None of us know at this point, you know, so that's an unknown for us. You know, and again, we assume that the locals will travel. Is looking very strong that way, but, you know, maybe they're going to wait to take that trip into Italy because Italy said, you know, we're ready for tourism. So there's still maybe a little bit of uncertainty there. And then if there's any others for you that are big unknowns that impact, please feel free to put that in the Q&A or chat. And so as now I've got these buckets of information or lack of information, but it's in a bucket. And I start now looking at running some various scenarios. So, you know, let's take a look at this extension on self-isolation. What happens if that was extended longer into the summer, which it may. We at this point don't know that. And so, you know, it could impact my reduction in revenue overall. It may impact some of the services, the revenue generating services and experiences that I offer because I can't meet, you know, I can't meet certain criteria, right? So that's going to be part of it. There'll be no new out of town bookings. There could be a strong cancellation of existing bookings, and there'll be excess inventory. So this could happen, you know, and so now if I kind of go, okay, if that happens, how do I respond to that? So one of the things, you know, we're going to be focusing on the local market, right? So people won't be coming in from outside of the province. And I start looking at it, this is kind of a bit bigger picture. So I've got the local market. But what I also have learned, and I'm sure all of you as business owners are going through this, is that my cleaning and hygiene standards have gone to a much higher level than even though you ran clean, safe operations before, we've all seen this rise. And so if I'm looking at it going, okay, if someone checks out of that room, I'm going to use an accommodation example, my costs as far as cleaning that room have gone up. I may be required to leave that room vacant for X time, you know, based on some brand standards, based on some legislation. So it would be way easier for me to have that guest stay longer. So I would like that Nova Scotian visitor to stay, you know, not 1 or 2 nights, come stay with me for 4 or 5 nights. So maybe I'm going to reach out to that, you know, the bookings I've already got and offering an incentive, a stay longer incentive. And I'm going to, you know, in here, I'm going to promote other venues and services in the local community, you know, in order to make that longer experience really great for them. And I might end up looking at, you know, if I've got this situation where, you know, things may not be opening up, I can't, you know, I can't meet certain criteria for the out of province because of the self-isolation. Is there a way that I can repurpose any venues? And we've seen so much innovation has come out of COVID. It's kind of going, okay, I've got this door closed, but another one really does open. And, you know, how can I make this look a little bit differently? And I'm going to put some new programs into place, you know, and I'm, you know, maybe I'm looking at a conference space that I hadn't been able to, you know, I'm not going to be able to use, right? And so in here, you know, maybe I'm going to run small 3 people cooking classes, you know, or 4 people, or doing something along that line, or I'm going to, you know, do a combination of small groups and then using using online services like Zoom. So there's, you know, in here, it's kind of going, okay, this thing has happened that I don't like, but how do I work around it? And this is really, you know, we've got it's operation and sales planning working hand in hand. And so let's take a look here from the audience. What I'd like to know, and this is, we're going to do this in the poll function, that'll pop up momentarily here for you. So based on previous years, what percentage of your business comes from Nova Scotia? So let's take a look at this. Okay, thank you. Lots of people putting some numbers in here, putting some answers in here for us. Thank you so much for that. Okay, we'll give it give it another kind of 15 seconds if that works for everybody, and then we'll see our final numbers here. Okay, so what we have in here, we've got a mixture in here. So the bulk is looking at 11 to 35%. Moving closely into the, you know, we've got 35% in that range, 27 in the 36 to 60% range. So for those of you in that more than 80%, you're in a very fortunate situation. It's going to be very easy for you to reach out to your existing customer base, maybe encouraging them to stay longer, maybe encourage them to do different things. For those of you that are into, you know, less than 10% or less than 35%, so this is going to be a little bit of work. So I certainly want to go back and capture those. So through my sales and marketing initiatives, reaching out to past Nova Scotia customers would be the first thing I want to do from a sales planning perspective. And then it's kind of going, okay, how do I attract more local visitors, local Nova Scotians to visit my restaurant, my attraction, my experience of, you know, how do I work with that? So thank you for your input there. And so as we know, the, you know, provincial focus, local residents first, will be what's happening now, and certainly from a planning perspective. And so we start looking at this customer potential 2020. So Emma and Peter gave us the focus for longer term. Want to make sure I've got that in place. And now, you know, from a short term, I'm looking at probably consumer direct. And so existing bookings. So I want to figure out who I've got, reconfirm that they're coming, past guests who I've already got a relationship with, and then a strategy to attract new customers. And so let's, another quick poll here. Who's already started to reach out to past customers? So if I could get that poll up, that'd be great. Okay. So almost 50-50, a little more in the yes, which is great. Okay, thank you for that. So for those of you that have put not yet, certainly encourage you to take a look at that right away. So that communication piece, touching base with your past customers, that would be a very proactive move. It doesn't have to be a big sales pitch at this point because you may not be ready for that, but just, you know, a little update on your business, touching base, hoping you're well. So a nice soft approach, starting that conversation. So when you're actually ready now to put an offering in the marketplace, there's already been some communication, and that makes it far easier. And the people that you have already been to your business, fantastic place to start. So that's a real easy one. So I encouraged you earlier to think of one immediate thing you could do. That would be a great one for those of you that answered not yet. Okay, and then we start looking at positive situations. So I'm looking at some timelines, I'm looking at some triggers. You know, all of a sudden the flights go up, self-isolation is lifted, borders open, more businesses are open, group sizes increase. So I'm going to have, you know, depending on my offering, so the group size might be important to me, it may not. But in here, if I'm working with, let's back to the family reunions, back to weddings, back to small tour groups, you know, all of a sudden, this is a big positive trigger, and I now have a plan in place that when group size restrictions are lifted, these are the things that I'm going to do. So these are the things you can do right now. Consider that. And you don't want to waste your time when you've got that go ahead and try to catch up. You want to flick on the switch and put all the actions that you've already considered, all the innovation and creativity you've put into that, and move that quickly into action. And so, yeah, an announcement is made that the border is opening, and then off you go. You start your marketing initiatives, reconfirming all upcoming bookings from the US. So very clear as far as what you need to do. And then we want to have a few, we want to take a look at the worst case as well. So, you know, definitely maintain a positive attitude, but take a look at going, okay, if there's no US travel this summer, how is that going to impact my business? What if I've got a situation that staff are afraid to come to work? One of the things that I've heard as working across the country is some supply chain and product issues. So I really encourage you, this is more of an operational, but it's going to impact the sales. If you are not able to provide that cleaning standard that we talked about earlier and using that as a selling feature, you got a real problem. So sourcing product now, if you haven't started, is critical. And that, I was surprised how many businesses are having a real challenge with that. So if you haven't had a chance to kind of work on that piece yet, figuring it's not going to be a problem, it might. So take a look at that. Other businesses reopening, and then the group sizes. So if this maintains, then what am I going to do? So I've got the triggers that all of a sudden, you know, this is lifted, I can move into action, or it hasn't lifted, and how do I now move into plan B? And so having some milestone dates. So if this hasn't happened by June 15th or June 30th, I'm going to make an assumption that it may not happen. I'm going to move into this other plan. And so just the worst case scenario, this is an example. It's not meant for you to read, it's merely just meant for you, but certainly read it when you have a chance to review the deck. But it's looking at Destinations Canada, some of the best and worst case scenarios. So just tying in that all businesses really need to take a look at this in order to be ready for when things change. And so in here, we talked a little bit already about the longer term approach, and thank you so much, Emma and Peter, again, for your input in there. So don't lose sight of it. Don't get caught up in this moment and lose sight of 2021 and 2022 and beyond. And so the groundwork needs to take place now. You can't start really selling to travel trade for summer 2021, you know, in March of April of next year. That's too late. All that groundwork has to be done now. And so in here, keeping those communication lines open, very much to Emma's point. This is one of the challenges, and Peter, feel free to jump in here with me. I know that some of the the tour operators and receptive tour operators are having a challenge getting responses. So people are working in different locations, the businesses might be closed, but they're trying to contract with you or work with you for the future, and they need a response from you, and they need it timely. So I know that it's so easy to kind of try to fix this moment, but please keep in mind that you know, it's a long-term business plan and business approach. And so in here with the alignment, so you've got lots of support. You've got a country that's really focused on selling Canada to Canadians, and you've got a province that's really focused on looking at the local market. And so some information here, I encourage you to kind of review this in more detail. Please go onto the Tourism Nova Scotia site. And so some key factors here have been identified. Many of these key factors, or all of them really, are going to impact, they're going to be key factors that will impact your business as well. So we've got travel restrictions, air capacity, you know, the virus is contained in the province. And then the whole locals first. So Nova Scotians currently account for 38% of overall tourism revenues in the province. And so this is great. There's already a real focus on local. It's going to increase based on the whole focus will be on Travel Nova Scotia this summer. And so you've got a real opportunity to leverage that initiative in marketing and present your own experiences, product and services along line with that. And so regional and close drive, you know, these are going to be part of the recovery. It's not going to depend on air travel. So we're looking at the regional, so Atlantic Canada, as well as Nova Scotia first, then Atlantic Canada. And so Atlantic Canada accounts for almost half of the overall non-resident visitation. So again, you're in a really fortunate position. I know I've worked with some regions where they're dependent like 80% or more on non-Canadian business. They're really struggling. You've got a pretty good situation, and there'll be lots of focus to help you leverage that. There's Nick and the team here will provide a little more information on an upcoming webinar. And so, you know, it's when we're looking at kind of what we covered here. So take a look at some likely shifts based on what you've already sold, and get a real picture of what you've got as far as capacity, and then start looking at impacts into that and forecasting. Put a sales action plan in place based on the short term. Don't forget the long term, and then consider what, from an offering perspective, how your product offering might need to change based on the shift in the client that you're trying to go after. And really put some plan B scenarios in place, so when you've got that trigger, you've got that trigger date or that trigger announcement, you are ready to go. So I thank you so much. You did spend a good hour with me, and we got lots of information from a number of people here. So what is your top trigger event announcement in the short term? So if I could get you to pop that into the Q&A just before we wrap. So what is the thing that you're waiting to hear about that's most important to you?
I will let you know as they pop in, Eva.
Okay.
Physical distancing lifted. That's what some people are looking about. Probably general group size, what's going to be allowed. Travel open within the province and Atlantic Canada. Let's see, what else do we have here? When are museums and other attractions able to open so they can develop tour packages?
Fantastic.
So, I mean, you can see this, it's a consistent theme through all these webinars. It's just that unknown, unfortunately, that people are dealing with, right? And when the information is made available through us anyway, Tourism Nova Scotia, we'll make sure it's updated in our frequently asked questions and our COVID-19 resources. So I can say confidently that as soon as anything changes we'll update our website in the specific section dedicated to COVID-19, and we'll share that link out after. And maybe actually I'll get Jennifer or Afton to share out that web address right now. Let me just see if there's anything else here I didn't get. There are some questions of somebody, of course, looking forward to restaurants being open again.
Great.
So, Eva, there's a question. We got some more group sizes for gatherings and local experiences to open, borders opening, guidelines for cleaning, that'll be important.
Mhm.
Another one around group size, whether or not boat tours can start on July 1st.
Okay. So some very specific triggers. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So really important that you identify your triggers. And then if it's a positive announcement, then you move into the plan A. If it isn't moving the way you'd hoped, you've got plan B ready to go. And so that's really the message here, is kind of plan it now, because by the time when you get that trigger, you will be so busy responding because everything will open up and there'll be a bit of a flurry that you want to make sure that you're not then trying to scramble with a plan. So great, we'll pass it over to any other questions, and Nick, then I'll pass it back to you.
No worries. Okay, so we have a question for Emma. Emma, I'm hoping you're still there. The question for you, Emma, is can you please elaborate on health travel interests mentioned by you regarding the UK market?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks in advance.
Pardon?
Thank you in advance for the
yeah. No worries. So what this pandemic has really highlighted is the whole hygiene, safety, cleanliness aspect, and certainly until a vaccine is in place, that's gonna be around for a long time. But I think even moving past that, and so if you can put practices in place to demonstrate that you're aware and conscious of hygiene, cleanliness standards, that will really go far for you. For example, if you were an attraction or a museum, keeping that kind of social spacing, even moving forward. I mean, previously, British people have always been very good at queuing, but, we will always be encroaching on our own personal space, and I think moving forward that's not going to be acceptable anymore. So if you can still kind of put measures in to keep kind of a social distance, and also looking at how you are conscious of the health and safety issue, for example, putting plastic screens up in receptions, the contactless payment is a big thing. Kind of anything like that, I think, is really high on the consumer's mind over here right now, and probably in Europe and other places as well. And moving forward, it will stay. So just really being mindful of that is what I mean. And for a consumer, that's when we say health is the new luxury. We have had this time where, the cars haven't been on the road, wildlife is coming back even in the UK, we've been quieter, we've reset our home work-life balance, and we're all actually a bit more appreciative of taking care of ourselves. So I think just kind of playing to those needs, we want this health and wellness moving forward. Does that answer it?
That's great, Emma. I think I had another question earlier. It came into the chat, so I just need to go back and find it there. Give me one quick sec. I think it actually would have touched a little bit on maybe what Emma was talking on. So just give me one quick sec. It was talking about they're looking at planning around Give me one sec, guys. I'm so sorry. We had so much in the Q&A. It's just need to go back and find it. That was actually it. So I'm just going to go through and find the other question. If there's any other questions for anyone here, for anyone, for Emma, for Eva, please ask it now. We'll just give it a second there, and I'll just also try to scroll through and find this other question I had. We had from Cyril Russell mentioned that the Hotel Association has released a Stay Safe initiative. and that was for enhanced industry-wide hotel cleaning standards. So maybe we can share that out later. I'm sure that's some helpful information there. And let's see, Eva, it looks like you're getting off easier today. You are muted, but I'm hoping that is laughter.
I had some help from my friend, so that made it easier. Thank you again.
Yeah. Oh, so here's that question actually from Paul Guerin, and that was for both the UK and Canada and Nova Scotia, would working with the wedding sector to create destinations still be of value?
Okay, so great question. You know, looking at it, it's really coming down to the group size, and so that'd be one of those trigger moments, you know. So perhaps you've got it for small weddings, you know, that the likelihood there is higher. Having a large 200-person wedding, I think in the short term that's going to be tough. Though when you start looking at the planning cycle for a 200-person wedding is usually a year out or longer. So based on that, it probably makes sense to continue on with that. So I would have kind of a longer term for the larger wedding focus, and then how do I market for small intimate family weddings? So maybe that's going to be the shift. Some people already had plans that have been disrupted, and maybe having to revamp the entire approach. So that's such a great example, because you've got, you know, 3 or 4 different options in there, and then how do you plan for each one? So thank you, great question.
That's perfect. So I don't see any more questions. So I just want to thank you, Eva, for the presentation today. That was wonderful. Gave people a lot of tangible things to work on and some things to plan without knowing what the future will hold, but just different scenario options. So thank you so much. And we're just going to take back over the screen and just finish up here. So thank you so much, Eva. Have a great day.
Okay, just one quick little thing that Jennifer
Sure.
asked me to put in. And so there are some great resources available to you. So eMerit, there's some free online training for sales managers. So we're looking at sales planning, and for the sales managers and for your reservation sales agent. And you'll also find another slide when you get the deck online, and it's got a list of other resources. Thanks for that, Nick, and I'll pass it back to you.
Well, thank you so much, Eva. So we are going to just wrap up here. So next week we have a really exciting webinar, and that is coming from M5. It's going to be delivered by Jonathan Duke. He is the Vice President of Marketing and Innovation with M5 Marketing Communications. And we're going to talk about how this is a perfect time to reset your marketing strategy. It's time to look at your business, reflect, and tackle some strategic items. So it's going to be great. We're going to work on 6 things to work on now so you can come out swinging when the guests come back. So it's going to be exciting. We can't wait for next Thursday at 10 a.m. with M5, and Jonathan Duke will be delivering it. So really excited for that. Now, we touched on a lot of things today. If you saw anything that you had any questions about, send us an email at tnsbusiness@novascotia.ca. Really encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. So that would be where we would let you know about any upcoming webinars, any new programs, anything that we feel that would be relevant for industry. Follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn. Our website is tourismns.ca. And our COVID-19 resource section, which I've referenced a few times, is tourismns.ca/coronavirus. So thank you again so much for joining us today. We'll see you next Thursday at 10, and I hope you have a great day.